Block 1. Something's off. I never thought my dream job would come with nightmares. My name is Sophie Blake. I'm 26 years old, and I've worked as a full-time nanny for the last 4 years. I love it. The structure, the calm of routines, the sweet chaos of toddlers figuring out the world. I've always had a way with kids. Parents say I make their home feel safe, stable, which is why I never questioned it when I was offered the position with the Hartmans. They found me through a private childcare network, the kind that caters to high-value families, where confidentiality, discretion, and experience matter more than degrees. The listing was vague. Seeking live-in caregiver for infant. Security experience preferred. I didn't think twice. They offered double my normal rate, a private suite, health benefits, and a quiet estate tucked into the woods outside Portland. I met them at a cafe, Emily and Grayson Hartman. He was older, late 40s, sharp suit, Wall Street energy. She was maybe early 30s, porcelain pretty, quiet, watchful. Their infant daughter, Lily, stayed asleep in her carrier the whole time. The interview felt more like a background check. They asked about my routines, my sense of privacy, my beliefs about loyalty. I assumed it was just rich people caution. They hired me the next day. I moved into their guest house that weekend. It was pristine, minimalist, high-end everything. The nursery looked like something from a magazine. But something was off. It started with the doors. They locked from the outside. The guest house, the nursery, even the laundry room. Electronic locks, key-coded. Grayson said it was for Lily's safety, that she was high risk, and they'd had issues with former staff. I didn't push, at first. But the third night I heard something through the baby monitor. Not crying, not sleep-talking. A voice, whispering. I checked the monitor, grainy video feed, all normal. Lily asleep in her crib. But the voice continued, low and clipped, like someone giving instructions. It was coming from the nursery. I ran up the stairs. No one there. The camera in the monitor blinked once, then cut out for 2 full seconds. I wrote it off as tech issues, until the next day, when I noticed the baseboard under the crib was slightly loose. I crouched down, pulled gently, and found a tiny, blinking lens buried behind the molding. Not part of the monitor, not in any contract I'd signed. A second camera, hidden, wired. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just high-tech parenting. This was surveillance, and I was being watched too. Block 2. Eyes everywhere. I stared at that blinking light like it might bite me. It was so small, so perfectly concealed. Anyone who wasn't looking for it would never notice. Not behind the white molding, not beneath the crib, not in a nursery that looked like it had been designed by a team of child psychologists and luxury architects. But I knew what it was. I've taken enough safety training to recognize a hardwired surveillance lens. This wasn't a baby cam. This was industrial. I covered it with a folded swaddle and stood up, trying to keep my breathing steady. Because now I had questions. And only one of 2 answers made sense. Either they were watching Lily, obsessively, pathologically, or they were watching me. I went through the rest of my day like normal. Fed Lily, took her on her stroller walk, made small talk with Emily about nap schedules and teething remedies. She smiled the whole time, but her eyes, they never stopped scanning, like she was waiting for me to slip. That night, after lights out, I swept the nursery, quietly, methodically. I used the flashlight on my phone, angling it low to spot glints of glass. I found 2 more hidden lenses, one tucked inside a bookshelf speaker, and another behind a vent. I felt sick. I checked my room. Nothing obvious. But there was a weird humming in the corner near the air return, just faint enough to ignore if you weren't on T listening for it. I pressed my ear to the wall, then heard a tiny click, like someone adjusting volume. I backed away slowly. Whatever was going on in that house, it wasn't about protecting a child. It was about controlling a narrative. The next morning, I tried to act normal, but Emily must have sensed something. She offered me tea when I came down to the kitchen. Something was already steeped. I declined. 10 minutes later, she asked again. She was smiling too wide, too deliberately. That's when I noticed Grayson was home at 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, standing silently by the back door in a pressed navy suit, watching me like I was a cornered mouse. Something wasn't right. I made an excuse to go outside and took Lily with me. We sat on the porch swing, and I made a call. Not to the police. Not yet. To Cassie, another nanny from my agency, someone I trusted. I whispered what I'd found. She went dead silent. Then she said, "You're not the first one. Get out, quietly, before you can't." Block 3. The nanny before me. Cassie didn't say anything else before hanging up. No details, no instructions, just urgency. It chilled me more than anything I'd seen in that house. I went inside, heart pounding. Lily nestled against my chest in her carrier. I took the back staircase to avoid the kitchen, placed her gently in her crib, and returned to my suite. Locked the door, sat on the bed, and finally allowed myself to feel it. The fear. The realization that I was in a home wired for surveillance, under the gaze of people who had gone out of their way to make it seem like luxury when it was actually a cage. And Cassie's warning? It wasn't just paranoia. I dug through old agency emails, backlogged newsletters, and group chats. Found the contract offer the Hartmans had posted before I took the job. It had only been listed for a week, removed quickly after they found the perfect fit. Me. But Cassie's name hadn't appeared in that thread, which meant she wasn't the last nanny. She was the one before her. I messaged her again. No response. So I searched deeper. Social media, forums, nanny groups on Reddit and Facebook. And I found a comment in a private caregiver thread. If you get a live-in offer from a couple in Portland with security cameras in the nursery, run. They watch everything. They twist everything. And when you leave, they'll try to destroy you. The user didn't list a name, but her handle matched one from an earlier reference email I'd gotten from the agency. Her name was Adriana. I found her personal blog, abandoned 2 years ago, and a post titled, "Leaving quietly is not consent." It was vague. She never mentioned the Hartmans by name, but the details matched. They said the last nanny broke boundaries. They said she was unfit. But I saw the way she looked when she left, like she'd barely escaped. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Adriana had left, but she hadn't spoken up, and now I knew why. Because this wasn't just about employment. It was about control, about documentation, about using a veneer of wealth and security to mask something invasive, predatory, possibly criminal. I had no idea what kind of system they had set up, or why. But I knew one thing. If I didn't leave carefully, they could spin anything. They had footage, audio, schedules. They could say I'd harmed the baby, or worse, that I was mentally unstable. I'd seen it happen, to other women, other caregivers. And if they'd done this before, they'd do it again, unless someone stopped them. Unless I did. Block 4, planning my exit. The next morning I packed a small bag, nothing suspicious. Just a change of clothes, my charger, and Lily's pacifier tucked in the side pocket like always. Routine, that was the key. Act like everything's normal until I'm gone. But nothing felt normal. Not the way Grayson lingered at the kitchen window, pretending to be on a call. Not the way Emily hovered behind me during diaper changes. Not the way Lily flinched when loud sounds echoed in the hallway. That day, I found a 4th hidden camera, inside a teddy bear, eyes stitched with glinting glass. This wasn't security. This was obsession, and I was starting to think Lily wasn't just being monitored. She was being documented, cataloged, controlled. I called the agency from the car while taking Lily for her daily walk. Told them I was concerned about privacy. I didn't use specifics, just hinted. They didn't ask questions, just said, "We'll reach out to previous placements and review your report," which was code for, "You're not the first." I stopped at a convenience store and bought a burner phone. I didn't want the Hartmans tracing my calls. Then I reached out to Adriana. This time, I didn't ask. I told her what I found. The cameras, the control, the way they tried to medicate me with sleep tea. She responded within minutes. They did the same to me. I left while they were at a gala. I had to change my number. They tried to say I was a danger to Lily. Filed a report. I had to lawyer up just to keep my name off a list. That last part hit hard. A list. They'd tried to have her blacklisted as a caregiver. And if I left without warning, they could do the same to me. No references, no work, no defense, unless I had proof. I waited until midnight, used the flashlight and my phone camera to film each hidden lens, narrated everything, where they were, how they were installed. I even opened the teddy bear, holding it up to the lens. "This is not a security feed," I whispered. "This is surveillance. I was never told, never consented, and I am documenting this for legal protection." Then I copied the footage to 3 cloud drives, one on my personal email, one on a dummy account, one on a private flash drive hidden in the lining of my suitcase. By morning I was ready. But they weren't going to let me walk out easily. Because when I stepped outside with my overnight bag, Lily in my arms, Grayson was already waiting by the car, arms crossed, keys in hand, smiling. "Going somewhere?" he asked. "Block 5. Checkmate in the driveway." I clutched Lily closer as I approached the car. Grayson leaned against the driver's side, his tailored jacket unbuttoned, posture casual. But his eyes? Calculating. Predatory. "I told Emily I was taking Lily to the park," I said calmly, adjusting her blanket. "That's funny," he replied, "because Emily says you didn't tell her anything at all." The silence stretched between us like a tripwire. I glanced at the car seat in my vehicle. Already fastened, everything packed. I'd rehearsed this, planned it down to the minute, but I hadn't counted on him waiting. He stepped forward slowly, almost apologetically. "You're not in trouble, Sophie. We just need to talk. There's been some confusion. You've seemed a little overwhelmed lately, tired." There it was, the narrative. "You should come back inside. Emily made tea." I backed up one step. "No, I think it's best I take Lily out for a bit." His smile thinned. "You're not authorized to leave the property with her unless we approve it." I froze. That was in the contract, but never enforced. Until now. Until they needed a reason to trap me. "I've been taking her out daily for walks," I said calmly. "No one ever stopped me before." "Yes," he said. "But after last night, Emily and I reviewed some footage. You've been acting strangely, digging around, whispering on the phone, checking under furniture. It doesn't look good." My stomach turned. He was threatening me, letting me know. They had everything recorded, every step, every look. I took a deep breath, then handed Lily her pacifier and made my move. "I'm aware of the cameras," I said. "All 6 of them. 4 in the nursery, 2 in my suite. None disclosed in the contract." His face didn't move, but his eyes narrowed. "I also know about Adriana, Cassie, the report you filed against her when she left." A flicker of something crossed his face. Recognition. "You're not the first," I added, "but I'm going to be the last. Because this," I gestured to the house, "is illegal, and I have proof, footage, Time-stamped. Backed up 3 ways. If I don't check in by noon today, it gets sent to the press. Grayson stepped back. That smooth, measured exterior cracked for just a second. "You think anyone's going to believe you?" he said finally. "I don't need them to believe me," I replied. "I just need one lawyer, and the footage speaks louder than you ever could." He didn't stop me. He didn't say another word. Just watched as I buckled Lily into the car seat and pulled away from the driveway, heart hammering, hands shaking, but eyes clear. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because the real fight was just beginning. Block 6, blowing the whistle, I drove straight to the only place I felt safe. The main office of the nanny agency that had placed me with the Hartmans. They'd called themselves a high-discretion placement firm, but their reputation was on the line now, too. The receptionist looked startled when I walked in holding Lily, bag slung over one shoulder, fire in my eyes. "I need to speak with Clara," I said. "Now." Clara was the director, mid-50s, no nonsense, a former nanny herself who built the agency from scratch. She knew the business. And more importantly, she knew the risks. She brought me into her office, closed the door. I didn't waste time. I laid it out. Everything. The hidden cameras, the intimidation, the surveillance, the pattern of prior nannies leaving suddenly under concerning mental health circumstances, the attempt to gaslight me into staying, the veiled threats from Grayson. Then I pulled out the flash drive. "This is everything," I said. "Footage, metadata, audio. You keep placing nannies with them, and eventually, one of them won't get out." Clara's face stayed composed, but I saw her jaw clench. "I'll escalate this to legal immediately," she said. "You'll do more than that," I replied. "You'll cut ties, pull their file, flag them in the system, and notify every nanny still working in that area." She nodded. It wasn't the first time she'd heard something like this, but it might have been the first time she had proof. By 3 p.m. that afternoon, the Hartman listing had been pulled. Their profile marked under review. An internal alert was sent to the agency's private network, not naming names, but outlining behavioral patterns and safety violations. I wasn't done. I contacted a lawyer next, same one Adriana had used. She remembered the case instantly. "They tried to build a file on her too," she said. "But it didn't hold. Too many contradictions. She got out just in time." I handed her everything I had. She promised a formal report to CPS, citing possible emotional and psychological harm to the child due to excessive surveillance and behavior monitoring. Then, I did something I hadn't planned. I posted to a nanny support forum, anonymous but detailed. If you were ever offered a job by a wealthy couple outside Portland who insist on privacy and state-of-the-art baby monitors, be careful. They don't want a nanny. They want a witness they can control. And if you resist, they'll try to rewrite the story. Protect yourselves. Trust your gut. Always look for the cameras. Within hours, the replies started pouring in. Some were scared. Others angry. And a few said they'd been there too. The Hartmans had built their house like a stage, but now the curtain was being pulled back. And the spotlight was shifting, right where it belonged. Block 7, their version of the truth. I knew they wouldn't stay quiet for long. 3 days after I left, the first call came. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Then a second. Blocked ID. Middle of the night. Then the email started. First from Emily. "We're concerned for your well-being, Sophie. Please reconsider discussing this matter further. It could be harmful for everyone involved." Then from Grayson. "Any defamatory statements you make against our family will result in legal action. We have documentation of erratic behavior and concerning conduct during your employment." They were trying to flip the script, gaslight me again, from a distance this time. But this wasn't their house anymore. This was mine. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. She responded with a cease and desist and an advisory warning that further threats could be considered harassment or witness intimidation. They backed off for about a week. Then came the kicker. A letter from a local law firm. The Hartmans were pressing charges: defamation, breach of confidentiality, and emotional distress caused by public dissemination of false claims. Classic Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. But they'd made a mistake. They assumed I was alone. The agency stood by me. Adriana submitted a formal affidavit confirming similar surveillance and intimidation. Cassie submitted a statement of concern. No legal weight, but enough to paint a pattern. And most importantly, my footage, time-stamped, verified, all collected before I left. It showed the cameras, the audio feeds, the lack of disclosure, and Grayson confronting me by the car. Their case unraveled before it even hit a hearing. 2 days after my lawyer submitted our counterclaim, alleging harassment, unsafe working conditions, and unlawful surveillance, the Hartmans dropped everything. Silently. No settlement, no apology, just disappeared from the agency's network and the public database. But it wasn't over for them, because CPS had opened a case. And while I didn't know what would come of it, whether they'd lose custody or just face scrutiny, I did know one thing. They would never be able to control the narrative again. Not after the forum posts. Not after the nanny community began talking. And certainly not after a freelance journalist contacted me, asking for a comment on the Portland surveillance nanny scandal. Block 8. The spotlight turns. The article dropped 2 weeks later. Headline: Watched, silenced, trapped. Nanny speaks out on elite family's surveillance tactics. They didn't use my name. I requested anonymity. But the story was unmistakably mine, and it spread like wildfire. It hit Reddit first, then TikTok, parenting forums, nanny communities, even a true crime podcast picked it up within days. The Hartmans weren't named, but readers are clever. Portland, wealth, private estate, infant daughter, live-in nanny. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots. And once they did, the floodgates opened. 3 more women came forward. One from Seattle, one from Boise, another from San Diego. All nannies, all with eerily similar experiences. Hidden cameras, sleep teas, locked rooms, threats of mental instability, quiet disappearances. One even alleged she'd been photographed sleeping. Another claimed a private incident report had been filed against her after she quit. One she never saw, but which followed her to other agencies. The Hartmans weren't just a toxic couple. They were predators hiding behind privilege. And now, they were being watched. The agency issued a public statement. We take the safety and dignity of our childcare professionals seriously. Effective immediately, all live-in placements will require full disclosure of all surveillance devices and written consent from staff. A win, a small one, but still. Emily and Grayson went silent. Socials wiped. No more charity galas, no new nanny listings. Then came a message that stopped me cold. A direct email, no subject line. It read, "You think you won, but you'll never be trusted again. We always find a way." There was no name, but I didn't need one. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to my lawyer, the agency, and the journalist. Because threats only work on people who still have something to hide. And I didn't. My story was out there. And theirs was finally crumbling. Block 9. The echo of control. Despite the threats, despite the legal posturing, I didn't stop. Because once you've had your reality distorted by people who wear smiles like armor, you either learn to go quiet or you go louder. I chose the second. I started consulting with nanny networks, hosting private Zoom calls for caregivers on how to detect surveillance, how to document misconduct, and how to legally protect themselves in hostile environments. I called the sessions No More Hidden Eyes. Within a month, over 200 nannies had joined. The stories kept coming, from every corner of the country. Women, and a few men, who had been monitored, manipulated, gaslit, and in some cases criminalized, all under the guise of elite family standards. What the Hartmans had done wasn't isolated. It was systemic. But now, there was a paper trail, voices, screenshots, and people were listening. I stayed anonymous in the public forums, but those who needed to knew how to reach me. The agency referred struggling placements to me. I worked with my lawyer to draft a downloadable nanny rights sheet, plain language, legal guidance, emotional red flags. I wasn't just healing, I was building something useful from the ashes. But some nights, the fear still crept in. What if they tried something again? What if they manipulated a new narrative? I kept cameras in my home, two-step auth on everything, cybersecurity software, a burner for sensitive tips. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. Because Grayson's last message wasn't empty. It was a threat disguised as certainty. We always find a way. But the thing is, so do we. Women like me, like Adriana, like Cassie, we don't just fade into silence. We grow teeth, we share, we remember, and we build a network louder than theirs could ever be. Because the difference between them and us? They want control. We want truth. And truth echoes longer than any camera lens. Block 10, the final watcher. 1 year later, I received a letter, handwritten, no return address. I opened it cautiously, half expecting another veiled threat. Instead, it read, "You didn't just save yourself. You saved me too. A." I knew who it was, Adriana. She never spoke publicly, never gave interviews, but she watched, she saw, and she knew. We were all part of a chain reaction. One voice triggers another. One spotlight opens 100 locked rooms. I framed the letter, not because it made me proud, but because it reminded me. Surviving isn't always visible. It's quiet. Cumulative. It's choosing to tell the truth when it's easier to walk away. The Hartmans? I never heard from them again. CPS followed up months later, confirming an ongoing investigation. I was never told the outcome, but their estate was sold. Their profiles vanished from every luxury network. Rumors spread they'd moved abroad. Let them run. Because their legacy was already burned into the community they tried to dominate. Meanwhile, I'm still working. Not full-time nannying, not anymore, but consulting, teaching, writing, and watching. Because the thing about being watched for so long, you learn to spot the watchers, and you learn to outlast them. My name is Sophie Blake. I was supposed to disappear, silenced by fear and power. Instead, I turned their surveillance into my spotlight. And now, I watch back.